Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padurjakacharya Ashtotar Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padurjakacharya Ashtotar Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the sum of devotees. All glories to the sum of devotees. All glories to the sum of devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. I have text 36. I think I'm right? Okay, thank you. All right, just give me a second here. All right. Okay. So on this 4th day of April, 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 14 of the 5th canto, which canto is entitled The Creative Impetus. The chapter is entitled The Material World as the Great Forest of Enjoyment. And we are on text number 36. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so this is prose, so I'll just read it myself. Oh no. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashtaprayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavad-gita shloke Bhakti bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil. And loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. But you're going to recite the Srimad Bhagavatam too. We're going to go word by words. And therefore, since you didn't get a chance to chant, I should chant that verse. Narayana namaskritya Narang chaiva narottamam Devim saraswatim vyasam Tato jayam hadiriyet Kvachit chinadana Shayasana Upabhoga Vihino Yavad Apratilabdha Manorato Pagadhadyane Abhasita Matis Tatas Tato Avamanadini Janad Apilabhyate. Okay, I'll just read the synonyms myself. 36, is this 36? 36. Chapter 14. Text 36. Kvachit, sometimes, china danaha, not having sufficient money. Shaya asana ashana adi, accommodations for sleeping, sitting, or eating. Upabhoga, of material enjoyment. Vihinaha, being bereft. Yavat, as long as. Apratilabdha, not achieved. Manorata, by his desire. Upagata, obtained. Adane, in seizing by unfair means. Avasita matihi, whose mind is determined. Tataha, because of that, tataha, from that, avamana adini, insults and punishment. Janat, from the people in general. Abhilabhyate, abhilabhate, he gets. Translation. So we're continuing the description of the person who's wandering, the conditioned soul wandering around in the forest of material enjoyment, suffering like anything. Sometimes, now, this is spoken by Shukadeva Goswami to Pariksit, explaining the allegory that was described in the previous chapter. You see, there were certain things that needed to be explained, and so Pariksit asked him, can you please elaborate on it? And he's explaining each verse now. We're almost through with this explanation. Sometimes, having no money, the conditioned soul does not get sufficient accommodations. Sometimes he doesn't even have a place to sit, nor does he have the other necessities. In other words, he falls into scarcity. And at that time, when he is unable to secure the necessities by fair means, he decides to seize the property of others unfairly. When he cannot get the things he wants, he simply receives insults from others and thus becomes very morose. Purport. It is said that necessity knows no law. When the conditioned soul needs money to acquire life's bare necessities, he adopts any means. He begs, borrows, or steals. Instead of receiving these things, he is insulted and chastised. Unless one is very well organized, one cannot accumulate riches by unfair means. Even if one acquires riches by unfair means, he cannot avoid punishment and insult from the government or the general populace. There are many instances of important peoples embezzling money, getting caught, and being put into prison. One may be able to avoid the punishment of prison, but one cannot avoid the punishment of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who works through the agency of material nature. This is described in the Bhagavad-gita 7:14. Also you say, daivī guṇa-mayī, māyā duratyayā. Nature is very cruel. She does not excuse anyone. When people do not care for nature, they commit all kinds of sinful activities, and consequently, they have to suffer. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Supadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Padijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padang Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Bhutangscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesh Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostite Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi. We did that one. Is that the last one? Vansha. Vansha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhu behevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai, thank you. So, this is another variety of misery in the material world. In fact, we can kind of see this one on the streets. There's these poor souls, they don't even have a place to sit down, lying down on the pavement, you know, in some little sleeping bag maybe they got or somehow or other. Cannot get sufficient accommodation, doesn't have a place to sit, doesn't have other necessities. And now he's describing here that then if someone becomes really desperate, they'll steal, they'll somehow get it. He has unsecureness. If by fair means he decides to seize property of others unfairly, and when he can't get the thing, he simply receives insults from others and thus becomes very morose. So this is the condition of the soul who's getting the sinful reactions. This is the idea, is that we perform sin in this world. Sometimes we may prosper from that sin for some time, but then there's always a price to pay. Just like you read about, you know, there's so many famous people who have made millions or even billions of dollars. And don't think that, you know, they've really succeeded in anything. They've just dug a huge hole for themselves in sinful activities. All the people they have to exploit, the money that they're holding on to that could be used for good things like building temples of Krishna, you know. Their future is very, very dark, you know. And we have heard so many varieties of ways in which the suffering is there in the material world. And if you look at, there's a common denominator for all of the suffering, and that is huge attachment of the living entity for material sense gratification. This is the normal state of the conditioned soul, is that without understanding Krishna, without cultivating detachment through Krishna consciousness and cultivating attachment to Krishna and feeling happy that way, blissful, then one must try to achieve happiness through the material energy. That's the only other alternative, because we are enjoying beings. I was just reading today in this wonderful book called The Dharma, The Way of Transcendence, which I'm going to refer to in a minute, how we are anandamaya abhyasat. This is one of the Vedanta Sutras, Anandamaya Bhyasat, which means that Anandamaya means full of bliss. Guṇa-mayī means full of, this suffix maya means full of. So Krishna is full of bliss. This is describing the absolute truth. And what is the abhyasat? Means we can understand that by studying his activities and personality, that he reveals that. You can tell that someone is in bliss. Just like you see a person, you can practically tell by their face. Are they in great distress? Are they happy? Are they satisfied? Face is the index of the mind. So, we are also part and parcel of Krishna, and therefore we also are by nature full of bliss. But because we're minute, because we're infinitesimal, Prabhupada explained, we are subject to being overwhelmed by the material energy when we turn away from Krishna, when we become a little bit envious. And that begins our material life in this material world. We get covered over by this gross and subtle body. This is described in great detail in the 3rd canto. It's quite amazing. What is the root of that being covered? False ego. The false ego, in contact with the different modes of nature, develops the mind, the intelligence, and then the different senses, and before you know it, we're covered. It's like a coat and a shirt. The shirt is the inner covering. That's the subtle body, mind, intelligence, and ego. And the coat is the gross body, these knowledge-acquiring senses, the active senses, and the body itself. All of that, we completely forget our actual identity, part and parcel of Krishna. So, but we remain enjoying beings. Our nature is there. And so we try to find that pleasure through the senses, gross and subtle. The mind also is a big object of enjoyment. If someone is sitting there watching a movie, yes, the eyes are active, the ears are active, but basically the enjoyment is in the mind. You're seeing all of this thing, the music and all these things, They can be just as intense and, as any kind of other pleasure. But, like all pleasures, it ends. This is the problem. Asat. Asad, as Prahlad Maharaj famously said to his father, the first question, what did you learn today? And so, well, the best thing I learned, what did the best thing you learn? He said, the best thing I learned, best of the demons, tat sadhamanye asuravarya dehinam sada samudvigna dhyama sadgrahat. The best, as Prabhupada says in the lecture, the best for whom? For the conditioned soul. Dehinam means those souls who are embodied, like us, who are sada samudvigna, are always disturbed in mind. This is udvigna. Samudvigna means always disturbed. Why? Asadgrahat. Because they're trying to find their pleasure and safety and meaning and everything in the asat, in that which is constantly changing, and which Krishna describes in the Gita is therefore not really that real. Everything which is always changing and becoming something else does not have the quality of reality that the eternal spiritual world has, that spirit has. Spirit doesn't change. This is the first lesson of the Gita. We never change. We were never born, never died, and we don't even change. We are eternally blissful spiritual beings meant to be in the spiritual world serving Krishna. But now all of that is dormant. And we're identifying with this temporary, ever-changing body, and we're identifying with our land that we live in. You know what Krishna says in the 10th canto? He says such a person's mentality is like a donkey or a cow. Sometimes it's gokara, you know that verse. Yasyatma buddhi kunabe tudatake swadika latrashata boma ijyadi yat tirtha buddhi salile nakarhijit janeshu bhigyeshu eva gokara. I saw one interpretation where it's the donkey that carries the grass for the cow, because we like cows so much. Anyway, it's not a very good mentality, right? What are those qualities? First, identifying with the body as the self. How is the body described? Guṇa-mayī. Guṇa-mayī means a corpse or a bag full of the three dhatus: mucus, bile, and air. Does anyone think, yeah, I have so much mucus, so much bile, so much air. I have more than you, therefore. No one, they try to create some kind of other identity. But that's what the body is. It's just this bag full of mucus, bile, and air with a living entity inside. So we identify as the living entity, not this machine of the body. So that's the first thing. Swadi, kalatradishu. So kalatra is the wife. When you get the wife, you expand. It's described by Rishabdev, right? You expand. Then you have to have the house, you have to have the money. Then you get the relative. You don't just marry a woman, you marry her whole family. Right? Of course, in America, who knows what's going on, but civilization, you marry the whole family. So that's adishu. So now, swadi, this is my family, this is my wife, this is my money, this is my children, my. I and my. That's another symptom of this ignorance. Swadi kalatadishu, boma ijidi, very prominent. There's wars going on right now, because some people are identifying, this is our land, boma ijidi, it's worshipable, and it should expand. We had that land before, now we're going to have it again, we'll kill everybody on it and block it. This is what's happening. So boma ijidi, another symptom of donkey-like mentality. Isn't that what we encounter? We're Americans, yeah. It's crazy. How long are you going to be Americans? You'll be Americans, but will you be human beings in America? And then he describes if someone goes, okay, he has a little religion, he wants to go on pilgrimage, but you go to the pilgrimage site, take a bath and come home. The whole pilgrimage is just going and taking a bath and come home, rather than going there and hearing from the great souls who live in Vrindavan or wherever it may be. Even this whole thing of pilgrimage, if you don't do it correctly, you don't really get any benefit. So this is Krishna's verse. He's describing like that. And the result of that donkey mentality is what we've just been reading in the last 3 chapters, is being cast into this material world and trying to make your way here, getting more and more degraded as a human being, losing the human form of life and then coming up to species. That's helpless life. And without the essential benefit of getting the association of devotees, those who are out of this illusion, and hearing from them, there's no way to stop that. You may be a great king, you may be a homeless guy on the street, or the 8 million other species, but the living entity who is originally in the spiritual world and is like unto God in the sense of being pure spirit, remains in illusion and remains suffering. So that's what's going on here. And so what's the way out? We have to practice genuine dharma, which we can learn from genuine realized souls. And what is the nature of that dharma? That's spoken of in the 2nd chapter of the 1st canto. The sages in Naimisharanya wanted to know what dharma can the soul practice? What can they do to come to the point of true satisfaction? Which is exactly opposite of what we're reading in the 5th canto now. There's no true satisfaction. So that's called prasidati. So immediately he answers, Savai Pungsang Paro Dharmo, this transcendental dharma by which to go. Savai Pungsang Paro Dharmo Yato Bhaktir Adhokshaje. Ahaitukya Pratayata Yatma Suprasidati. There's that word, suprasidati. Not just proceed, but supersede, completely satisfied. So here's the answer. Right there in the 2nd chapter of the whole Bhagavatam. I always thought, as you've heard before, these Kali Yugas, they'll never get through the whole Bhagavatam. Even the whole Bhagavatam is printed, the Hare Krishna devotees, there's probably, I don't know how many percentage have actually read through the whole thing. So it's long. It's 18,000 verses, and then there's all the purports. So it's a task. We should do it. But even if you just get to the 2nd chapter, you'll get the full lesson. They don't want all right, so don't deprive of the full lesson. Then it's repeated, elaborated on, of course. You should read the whole thing. But here's the complete lesson. Prabhupada would always quote these verses. So, Savai Pungsam, for the human being, the supreme dharma by which we can regain our blissful spiritual nature. Yato Bhakti Radhokshaje is that which results in bhakti, devotional service to Krishna. To Adhokshaja. Now this word is chosen carefully. Adhokshaja is a name for God, for Krishna. It's not a Vrindavan name. There's no pastimes there. But it describes that personality of Godhead which we can't see and we can't perceive right now, and therefore we need faith. We need to come in contact with someone who is perceiving and who can give us the faith. Adhokshaja, it's an interesting word. It's made of 3 elements, Ada, Aksha, and Ja. Ja means born, and Akshaja indicates knowledge born of the senses. Aksha is eyes, or it stands in for all the senses. So we've had senses in all different lives, but we can't see Krishna. So Ada means he pushes all that knowledge down. He's transcendental. It's the very definition of transcendental, which means beyond the range of the mind and senses. So it's that Lord that we need to develop real bhakti to. So how can we do that? Well, as I mentioned, we need to get in touch with the pure soul, the Guru, Sadhu, and of course the Shastra, so that we can know who it is we're worshiping. What does he look like? What are his qualities? And this whole culture, the Gaudiya Vaishnava culture, every Vaishnava culture, but especially the Gaudiya Vaishnava, we've given the name, we're given the form, we're given the activities, the address, everything, so that you can worship that person as the supreme person and develop bhakti, love for him, rather than for all of the asat, the wife and the children and the family and the money and everything else that we develop attachment to, but which ultimately is taken away. That's why he says the cruelty of nature. Daivī guṇa-mayī, māyā duratyayā. If you're not Krishna conscious, there's no way you can cross beyond māyā, beyond this material world, which is dukkhalayam. This whole chapters are simply an expansion on that word dukkhalayam. Who can say what it means? Raise your hand. Beside Vijay and Balaram. Banit. Yes, the abode of misery. We've been listening to all the varieties of it. Many of us, or all of us, that experience some of the varieties, and here is more varieties. And so, how to get from the state of misery or imminent misery, which produces fear, which is another kind of misery, to this place beyond all fear, beyond all difficulties. That's Vaikuntha. Vaikuntha, no anxiety. There's no misery, and like that. So that's a process of dharma. Dharma is something that you do. Dharma is an activity based on a philosophy. And so there are all kinds of dharmas which are upadharmas, kudharmas, false dharmas, which don't really give you the result, which is that you're progressively developing your attraction for Krishna. And so what does it say here? Now, so what's the quality of that dharma, of that bhakti? The bhakti that we're developing through the dharma. Ahaituki and apratiyata. Now these two words are very important. Ahaituki means without any material motive. We're not trying to serve Krishna, so, give us this day our daily bread. Or even the four processes, Krishna says in the four categories of pious people who do approach him, but they're not devotees. Chaturvadabhaja jana sukritanorjan, they're sukriti, they're pious, but if they stay on the platform of simple material piety, it's not enough. But it's good because they approach him for arto, jigyasa, artati, jnani. There's four categories. The most common reason is people are in trouble. Arta, they're suffering. All kinds of people go to church, temple, everything, or just at home, pray ardently, please, my child has cancer, please cure him, or whatever, a million different things. So that's good, at least they're approaching God, rather than being atheists. And another one is artarti, for money. Now they kind of, they're not mutually exclusive. That itself can be a tremendous misery, as we're just reading. No money, you have no place to sit, no place to lie, no food, But that's a different category. Arto and artarti. But then comes one who is curious about Krishna. They've seen us on the street, they got this little book, and it's very, very interesting, intriguing. And so out of curiosity, they come to the temple and check out the scene on Sunday, or the lounge. This is called jigyasu, which is a very important point, is that they're curious and they inquire. The beginning of the Vedanta Sutta, tato brahma jigyasa. Now you're a human being, you should inquire into the absolute truth. Not just the price of this, the price of that, where is she, where is he, No, you should inquire, we're inquiring beings, into what is the absolute truth, which is defined as, where did everything come from? What's the meaning of all this? Who am I? What's my relationship with that being? Is there a supreme? Those are the questions we should ask as human beings. Brahma Jigyasa. And he defines it as, yes, that which is the source of everything, which maintains everything, and which ultimately destroys everything, but which never is eternal. That's a general definition for God. So, now, so suppose you say, okay, I want to take up this process. Ahoitiki bhakti, I'm going to try it. So what happens? It says, Dharma, Vasudevi Bhagavati. So now we get, who is this at Hokshaja? Oh, it's Vasudeva, that's Krishna. There's not much suspense there. It's Vasudeva. Vasudeva Bhagavati, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhakti Yoga Prayojita, one who engages in that. Not who has perfected it, but who begins. What's the result? Bhakti Yoga Janayat Yashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayada Hoitikam. Here's that word Hoitikam in the second verse of this series too. So Janayati means, it's practically an English word, generate. It generates Ashu very quickly. Vairagyam, freedom from raga, detachment. Isn't the whole point of these chapters is that the living entity is attached to all these things, and therefore you suffer? The vairagya is essential for bhakti, but it doesn't take place in a vacuum. The vairagya is proportionate to your raga for Krishna. You're transferring your attachment. Attachment is part of your nature as a living being. We're supposed to be completely attached to Krishna. That's love of God. But it's been diverted to all these things and people and whatever, and therefore we're suffering. So simply by beginning the process, and anyone who seriously takes it up, the Bhakti Yoga, Krishna Consciousness, can feel that, like you were telling the story how you were still living outside, but you weren't interested in hanging out with your friends and talking about the sports or whatever else you were doing. You lost your interest because you're chanting Hare Krishna and coming to the temple. It's a science. So all important. He gives the very second verse of the series here, is that janayat ahoitukim, seemingly without any cause. You're not thinking, yeah, I got to become detached. I mean, we should try to be detached. That's what the four regular principles are for. But the four regular principles alone don't give you detachment. If you just tell people, okay, you got to give up meat, got to give up sex, got to give up all intoxication, and gambling. Everyone says, are you kidding? Forget it, But we don't tell them that first. We say, here, take this prasadam, chant Hare Krishna, come to the temple, read the book, And then they find themselves becoming attracted, said, yes. And now to really, feel the bliss and the happiness of Krishna consciousness, don't engage in these things. Oh, I don't engage. Yeah, you can do it. You just chant Hare Krishna and you pray to Krishna for the strength that you can do it. And before you know it, wow, I've been trying to give up cigarettes and alcohol for years. Now suddenly I've been able to do it. And by that realization, you get more faith in the process and you go on. You see. So that's the first two verses. And it goes on like that, and I'm not going to go over each verse, although each verse is important. But the ultimate point is that you need to get taste for hearing about Krishna. Because we should always remember the name, the form, the qualities, everything about Krishna is Krishna. When we're really hearing our rounds, or when we're hearing the descriptions of Krishna in Krishna book, then Krishna is there. And he's attracting us away from the material energy toward him. And so that essential process of all 9 processes, that's why it begins with hearing. Shravanam, Kirtanam. And the hearing is confirmed and strengthened by us repeating the message. That's why in Kirtan, I hear what you chant, you hear what I chant. Isn't it? And we're all hearing the holy name. And we're just immersed in the holy name. And the concentration is even increased by dancing. This is Lord Chaitanya's program. So that's the basic process is Sankirtan. But it also expands. We have all of these wonderful descriptions in the Bhagavatam. Lord Chaitanya came to, give us the Bhagavatam philosophy. He based his whole thing on the Bhagavatam. As I mentioned, the last verse in the whole Bhagavatam, the 18,000th verse, begins with Nam Sankirtan. Yeah, Nama Sankirtanam Yasya, Sarva Papa Puruchade. Just by that Sankirtan, all your sins are gone. And now that sins, it clears the heart. You become more peaceful, and you become more sinful reactions become more peaceful, and you become more receptive to the message of Godhead, to Krishna consciousness. So it's a science, as Prabhupada says. So he describes various ways. He's actually also going through Varnashram Dharma and explaining what the real meaning of that is. The whole purpose of Varnashram Dharma, its perfection, is to satisfy Lord Hari. Atak pumbid vida shrestha varnashram vibhagasha. Swanasitasya dharmasa sanksadi haritoshanam. The perfection of your activity in any of the 8 of the varnas and ashrams is to satisfy Lord Hari. If that's not the purpose, then you're getting more and more entangled in the material energy. And you can easily become, hey, I'm a Brahmin, and I'm on top of the social hierarchy. And you start exploiting others, and in other words, you lose the thread. Varnashram has to center on bhakti, and then it's perfect. Then everyone in whatever class they're in is satisfied. How are the Shudras going to remain satisfied if the Brahmins and the Vaishyas and everyone is lording it over them? No, they'll form a union, go on strike, try to get more money. But if your activity and material activity you're doing is just one aspect, what really counts is coming together for kirtan and celebrating the festivals, and the higher classes are being very merciful and giving. You read the Krishna book. They're giving so much charity to the lower classes, and everybody's material needs are met. and they're happy because they're all chanting Hare Krishna. That's the only way to do it. So it goes on, and then the last 4 verses, 4 or 5 verses, give the essence of the whole series. So I'll just run through those real quick. So he's described how one can attain real taste for hearing. That's the key. Because by hearing constantly of Krishna, you'll get remembrance. And that remembrance, that's like a sword. Yadununasya karma granti nabandhanam, to cut off all of your latent sinful reactions and all good and bad reactions. Karma granti nabandhanam. Chindandi kapadastata kona kuya katadatim. Who would not be attracted to hear about Krishna? The benefits are enormous. It's free. So once you get that taste, and you have to cultivate it, shushusho shadadhanasya, means with great attention, hearing ardently. Then comes, Krishna gets involved more directly. Shrinvatam sakata Krishna punya shabana kirtanam riddyantaksto yabhadrani vidunoti suditsatam. So all of these attachments and grievances and grudges that we hold in our heart, lifetime after lifetime, they're all called abhadra. The things that are inauspicious, that are keeping us from understanding who we are and forgetting and making us forget Krishna. So Krishna's in the heart. So when we start hearing about him nicely, with great attention and interest, fascination, love, then he, within the heart, cleanses away all those abhadras. Shrinvatam sakata Krishna punya shabana kirtana. Krishna, who's auspicious to hear about, just by hearing his name, your life becomes auspicious. Riddyantaksto yabhadrani vidunoti suditsatam. Now, it's a process. All of those things don't get cleansed away instantly because we've been holding on to them for many, many lifetimes. So then the next verse, the one I chant at the beginning of every class, nashta prayeshu abhadreshu. When a good percentage, probably says like 70% or something like that, of these abhadras are gone. Nashta means destroyed. Abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevya, by constantly serving the Bhagavatam through hearing, chanting, thinking about, trying to follow the instructions, and the person Bhagavat. 2 Bhagavats. The book Bhagavat and the person Bhagavat. There's the purport to Nashta Prayeshu, I can show you. Both of those are necessary. So what's the result? Nityam Bhagavat Yuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. One gets this irrevocable nishta, firm determination, which is characterized by real faith. Faith in Krishna, faith in the Guru, faith in the process, and faith in yourself that Krishna can empower you to actually do the things that seem impossible right now. That's another way you can lose your way in Krishna consciousness. It's very good, but I don't think I can do it. I'm so contaminated, I can't do it. So let me go out and try it. I'll burn out the senses by enjoyment, then I'll be able to surrender. That's a common fallacy. No, it doesn't work that way. So, he says, when these abhadras are gone to some degree, high degree, but not completely, one comes to the state of nishta. That's this famous irrevocable devotional service. So what's that quality of faith? Shraddha shabde vishwas kohe sudradhanishtroy Krishna bhakti korle sarva karma kritahoy. This is Lord Chaitanya's teaching to what real faith is, and I think Sanatana Goswami. So what does it mean? Very important to understand. It's quoted in the Bhagavad-gita purport. Shraddha shabde, the definition of shraddha, the real shraddha. Vishwas kohe means a very firm determination. Sudridha nishtroy, which is extremely strong. That what? Krishna bhakti korle sarva karma kritahoy. That just by performing the activities of Krishna consciousness as we've been given, sadhana bhakti, you see, all of my aspirations will be fulfilled. I don't have to do anything else. This kind of faith is important, the foundation. And then your ruchi begins to increase. This is described as you get more and more ruchi. Everything becomes so tasty. The chanting and the hearing and the association and the tulsi puja and the worship and the service. It's all nectar. That's why you don't want to sleep so much. You want to keep doing it. So the next verse describes this state. Tadadadastomo bhava kamalo bhadayaschaye. That the rajas and tamas, the lower 2 modes of nature, are practically nil now. You're firmly fixed on the mode of goodness and going up to the mode of pure goodness, which is not tinged at all by lower modes. Nashta prayesha buddha, tada rajastamo bhava kamalo badayashiye. Because the concomitants of the rajas and tamas is lust and greed. We have to get past these and become greedy for Krishna, and the lust turns into prema. Kama cheta eta anabadab. Your chitta, your mind is no longer disturbed by these. Stitam sattve prasidati, and you're fixed in goodness. Then what? Evam prasanna manaso bhagavad-bhakti yogataha bhagavad-tattva vijnana mukta sangha sajayate. This word prasanna has two meanings. One is very naturally joyful. Brahmabhuta prasannatma. Brahmabhuta is on the spiritual platform. So this is evam, thus, prasanna manaso, your mind becomes full of joy and also very clear. Prasanna also means very clear. Bhagavad-bhakti, by the process of Krishna consciousness, Bhagavad-bhakti yoga. Bhagavad-tattva vijnana, now starts to come some realization. Krishna is revealing himself to you more and more. Not just that you know about Krishna, but you know Krishna to some degree. He's revealing. Bhagavad-tattva vijnanam mukta sangha sajayate. And you become a liberated soul, you see. And then comes the last verse in this series. Vidyate vidya grantis. All of your knots in the heart, vidya, the desires are cut to pieces. No more material desire. Vidyate vidya grantis. Chidyante sarva sankshaya. All your doubts are completely gone. You're full of faith. And chiyante chasya karmani. All your karma is eradicated. Good and bad. You're free of karma. Then what? Drishta evat manishvare. You see the Lord himself in your heart and outside. And you see yourself as well. What is my real nature? What is my real eternal identity? So this is the final end point. And that's way beyond any of these miseries we've been reading. All of that is because you're not attached anymore. You could be a billionaire, or you could be walking in the street, without a home, just like the Goswamis. But they're the happiest. Material necessities come down to the very minimum. But your spiritual necessities are being fulfilled. That's why. So this is right there in the second chapter. In case this Kali you guys can't get too far in the book, the whole lesson is right there. And Prabhupada's purports are so wonderful. We made a book out of him and his lectures on these things. Dharma, the way of transcendence. So we've passed this. This is now the fifth canto we're reading every day. But the first canto was there, and there are other places, of course, that have given us the similar lessons. But this fifth canto, what we've been reading, is to make us completely pessimistic about trying to enjoy in this material world. Even though we may, find a little peace and happiness, just look, the last 2.5 years, isn't it? How long is it? This pandemic has ruined everybody's dream of happiness. Even if you're okay for a while, you don't know what's going to happen when you go out, and then you have to shelter at home, and there's so much mental. Because the illusion has been popped. There's no happiness here. It's danger at every step, at every breath, right? Danger at every breath. We had this wonderful festival in Laguna Beach. Unfortunately, a bunch of devotees came down with COVID. I'm sorry? Yeah. One of those devotees is Bhadin Narayan Swami. And we had, and there's others too. So, not that we're not going to have festival, but the point is, it's a dangerous place. It's a place we want to get out of. And any material pleasure, of course, that's something else, a transcendental experience, is just, signing your ticket for suffering, assuring that, if you enjoy now, then you'll suffer later. And like I always point out, the enjoyment is very flickering, comes and goes, but the suffering can last a million years. We're coming on the chapter that deals with the hells, and I don't think it's the next chapter. It's the 20 something chapter. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's a little ways off. No, we're going to read a whole thing about the universe. Remember the whole description of the universe. I don't know if we're going to have to read all those synonyms. 8,000 yojanas, 100,000 yojanas. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. Okay, any questions on these points?
How does, thank you for a wonderful class. How does, and thank you for going over those verses from the second chapter, very inspired to go continue.
Yeah, just pick up the Dharma way of transcendence on the end.
Okay.
Prabhupada's lectures are very wonderful too. Okay.
How does Shuddha-sattva function as like a springboard or a bridge from the highest mode, sattva gun, to direct devotional service to Krishna in the spiritual world? What's the special function of Shuddha-sattva?
Well, Shuddha-sattva is also known as the Vasudeva state, because Vasudeva appears there. In other words, Stitam Sattve Prasida, the verse that's in the series there says you're situated in goodness. It doesn't say pure goodness at that point. It's situated in goodness, which is a very important springboard for practicing effective devotional service. That's why the ashram life, the temple life, is meant to be in the mode of goodness. You know, okay, clean it. You know, keep clean and get it regulated and all these different things. That's part of the mode of goodness, because there you can begin to experience, you know, Krishna consciousness very effectively. The sadhana becomes much more easy if you're in the mode of goodness. Otherwise, you're always fighting, you know, the senses. The typical thing is you're going along nice, big kirtan, Sunday feast, and you just can't resist. You know, that third plate of halva and all those pakoras. What happened? Now I'm in the bodily concept of life. I tell this story. For years, I was, you know, a halva addict and ladus. And so there I'm lying up in the bunk, you know. Never again, never again. Next Sunday, you know. So it's a struggle. But at a certain point, you know, it becomes obvious that atyahara priyasascha will destroy you, you know. So you get a higher taste, you know, and you reduce. A lot of times it comes because, you know, your health is being affected. You know. But the point is that it's a struggle. We've been conditioned so long. And so Prabhupada gave us a process by which we can have some gratification at first, you know, and then wean ourselves from that, and because your taste for Krishna is becoming so stronger, you know, for shlokas, for chanting, for service, for all these different things. And you realize that, oh, this is damaging my service. I don't want to do that anymore. So then, you know, you get more and more in the mode of goodness. You know, it's control. Control of the mind is where the more mode of goodness comes in. And that becomes, then as I mentioned, and it's mentioned in the Bhagavatam, your ruchi, when you come to Nishtha, this is the platform in the same thing as Naishtiki. You can see the relative words. Nishtha. It's good to read the Nectar of Devotion. It's essential to read the Nectar of Devotion. And there's these two verses that are very famous. It's the ladder from faith to love, from Shraddha to Prema. And you can see it in our own lives. It begins with some faith. That faith can be expressed by your opening the book and reading it with fascination. You know, if you didn't think if you thought it was just a big cult, you wouldn't even touch it. But if you have some faith because you've met a devotee, you've been chanting a little like that, and so that faith has to lead you into the association of devotees, where you really want to find out more, and you want to associate with some devotees. So you come maybe to the temple or the house where they have it, wherever it is, or the site on internet. But it's best if it's person to person. And from that, you get attracted to the devotees, the lifestyle or the personality. You say, oh, this person has something I want, And so you read the book more, and then you say, well, why shouldn't I also have this? Anyone can do it. They told me. Okay, get some beads. You start chanting. So that's bhajana kriya. And when you get serious about that, then you say, well, I want to get initiated. I want to get confirmed in this. And that requires certain prerequisites, and so you have to, meet certain requirements. And so one initiated is there, and the hearing and chanting goes on, and the anartha nivritti, which is equivalent to the Bhadras being washed away by Krishna, is going on, the more strictly you practice. And when a certain number of the anartas or buddhas are gone, then you come to the nishta stage, which is naishtiki. And that stage, as I mentioned, is characterized by this firm faith. Now you've come to the point, I know that bhakti is what I want to do, that all of my desires will be fulfilled. And you know, my material desires are waning, so my spiritual desires will be fulfilled, my life will be fulfilled. You have faith in it. And so you're more determined. That's what nishta means. And that's the definition of faith. So so at that point, you're pretty much situated in the mode of goodness, and the little contaminations of rajas and tamas are waning. And when they're down to nil, then you're in pure goodness. And then you're really, on your way. To ruchi and asakti, bhava and prema. There's these 4 stages that come after, nishta. Ruchi, more and more taste for everything, the holy name especially. And asakti, actual attraction to Krishna, to the personality of Krishna. And that matures into bhava, which is just near prema, and then prema, even prema has different levels. So it's a process, and any human being can do it. And we're human beings. Right, so? That was a yes. He opened his eyes. Okay. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Haribol. Oh, I didn't ask for questions from